You finally learned how to apply a smooth base coat to your miniatures, just so you can go and cringe looking at your miniature. But wait, there is hope yet. The one, the king, the honorably named liquid talent, the wash. A stupidly easy way to give contrast and definition to your miniatures. No more problems, right? After a while, you start noticing little stuff that you don't really like about washes. Does that mean you have to give up on washes altogether? No, of course not. Because today we're gonna figure out together the best absolute way to apply washes. The final beginner-friendly way. But first, let's talk about... Today I'm gonna be focusing on acrylic washes. So throw the oil washes aside for a sec. Well, yeah, I personally used things like Agrax Airshade or Nuln Oil for a very brief time of my life. Because I think that washes themselves are kind of dead. And I talk about it in this video here if you wanna watch it later. The product that for me replaced washes altogether were contrast paints. Let me tell you why. Because they're more powerful, they're more pigmented, they're available in more colors, and they're just more opaque and cooler. The only con is that you'll need to dilute them in order to use them as washes. I know by now you know how to thin paints because you watched my other 2 videos, right? But in case you didn't and you still want to learn how to apply washes, you can still use regular washes and apply every tip here, those kind of paints. In order to avoid repeating myself and tell you the same thing over and over and over, I researched the topic thoroughly in order to figure out what other people were teaching and what exactly I could add to it. For instance, one of the most informative videos I found was the one from Tabletop Minions with Sam Lentz. So they say to be mindful about brushstroke direction, meaning directing the paint towards the shadow areas, and also to work in small areas at the time and not to slap on a bunch of wash in the same and that's super good advice. I couldn't agree more with these tips, but the issue that I have with these types of videos is that they tend not to talk about and not to show the applications on different surfaces, which is kind of pivotal. In fact, it's as easy to apply a wash on a textured surface, like for example these orcs' armor, as it is art to apply it on more smooth surfaces or, you know, flat surfaces. So come along, vieni con me, and let's test together different wash application techniques and figure out which one works for each type of surface. I will test the application of the washes on 2 types of model. One will be more textured and the other one will have more flat areas. This will be respectively orcs and Rangers of Gondor. It's also needed to say that the Rangers have a beige part where you can actually see more details, so it's like a middle ground between the overly textured orcs and the overly flat areas of the cloth or the Rangers themselves. Okay, let's start with the texture surface of the orcs. I will be using 2 orcs to test 2 methods of application. One is gonna be more sloppy and the other one will be a little bit more thought out and, you know, controlled and bam 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 bam. In the video I mentioned before, Sam Lentz applies a very thin layer of wash, which is almost imperceptible, which I think it's something beginners are not gonna do. And I think they're more inclined of using the approach I'm using for this first orc, which is slapping it on, because most people, they want to see the results immediately, and the wash gives them exactly that. On second orc, I am gonna instead apply the wash in a more careful way, trying to, you know, direct my brush stroke toward the shadow, exactly like I mentioned before, and like in fact demonstrates Sam Lentz. Here the color is a little bit more diluted, and I'm just being a little bit more mindful and careful for the color not to pull in the recesses too much. That's really it. So what's the difference between these 2? None. None. Really, there is no difference. For a textured surface, you could apply the wash with your cat's tail and probably would end up being very, very good anyway, but your cat probably won't be that happy about it. But you know, what I mean is that with textured surfaces, you're good. You can do whatever you want. You can apply it however you want. really. You can see the second here is just a little bit more light, maybe has a slight less staining, but other than that, the other one is good. It's enough. Just slap it on. So now it's time for the Gondor's Rangers. So here I wanted to do the same exact thing that I did for the orcs, and to show you the bad application and the good application. But I really had a hard time because they both ended up looking pretty ugly. Even the slightly more texture beige part came out pretty stained and spotty, and trying to move the paint around didn't really work, and on the capes was even worse. So I ended up doing the first 3 rangers in a very, very bad way. Like I was saying, on the capes was even worse because wash pulls are naturally in the recesses, which in reality they shouldn't be in shadows. What a mess. But I promised you a guide on washes, and hell, I'm gonna deliver it to you, even if I had to paint the whole Osciliath box set to do it. So I took other 3 rangers, this time being mindful of using 3 different dilution on the 3 different models. So I painted 1 extra thin, 1 in the middle ground, and 1 on the heavy wash. I wanted to show you that you can achieve good results no matter the dilution you are using, as long as you're being mindful of what you're doing and as long as you're being quick and careful. So starting with the middle ground, I diluted a little bit of snakebite leather contrast paint. I move it around very quickly. I try not to make it pull. The movement of the brush is pretty important. You have to be fast here. And to avoid pulling, like I said before, wick off the excess paint on your brush, and with a clean one, just tap on the extra paint in order to the pool to disappear without leaving that nasty stain. Now for the heavier, even though I'm using less diluted paint and a more loaded brush, I can still avoid staining and pulling if I work quickly, and if I can move my brush around quickly and decisively. And finally, with the lighter and thinner application, to be honest, I have to be even more careful because on the first 3 rangers where I tried this technique with thin wash, I did risk to create streaks and bad staining because I dragged the paint. I don't know exactly why, but here I'm being even more careful to move the paint around and to be quick and precise. And I think this method of applying thinner coats could benefit from 2 coats. My conclusion to this is that no matter what, you can apply a good wash in any dilution as long as you, 1, careful about the pulling, 2, quick with a brush, 3, confident with a brush, and 4, give it a little bit of time, because this, at the end of the day, is a skill and you will train it and you will become more confident and better at it the more you practice it. But Alice, what about the capes? Well, no matter how you paint them with washes, they're gonna suck balls. Simply because washes tend to follow the rules of gravity and pull in the recesses, which, like I mentioned before, is not a shadow area in reality. So how should you paint them then? My suggestion is doing quick highlights where the value is slightly higher than your base color, and you just go and highlight the raised areas and the recesses of the capes, like I'm showing here on screen. Pretty simple. And the other thing that I learned through time that I want to share with you before I f*** off is never retouch a washed surface because it's gonna suck. Just repaint the base coat over that if you're not happy with it. I have other 2 videos in this playlist. You can check it out here. I think they're very, very important and pivotal for beginners, and they're not discussed enough. So help spread the knowledge that came from me. Well, not really. I have a kind of low self-esteem. It's hard to talk about it.